Hi, Dave Himel, Himel Brothers Leather. We're a bespoke jacket making company specializing in custom jackets here in Toronto, Canada. Today, I'm going to talk about my Ross Mark 1, which is what I call a boner jacket. So before I start and tell you the story of this jacket, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I'm wearing, because we are a clothing brand. Wearing my custom Shinky horsebutt boots that I made in Mexico but never produced, and I'm wearing Free Note cloth jeans, Pertolas, generously donated from Matt and Andrew at Free Note, who are brand brothers. If you get a chance, look up their website. They make incredible stuff. It's California Western wear and denim. And there's something special. I'm working on a project with them, and I am making the perfect camp shirt, which I'm wearing the first prototype of here. So this red shirt here is a heavy red chambray. It's almost like a jean denim. It's 10 ounce. It's very bendy, almost folds up like a leather jacket. And it's basically based on a design of a World War II Canadian military shirt crossed with an early 1910, 1920s work shirt. But I built it for camping, so it has all the appropriate things I need when I'm out in the woods. Mosquitoes can't bite through the fabric. I've got this big pocket right here with a smaller pocket for lighters, cigarettes, fishing lures, whatever you need. Then this little expandable pocket over here. There's even an homage to the 1900s with a pass-through belt loop where you can put your pants belt through the shirt if you wanted to hold it up. The buttons are original old stock. I bought original buttons from the 30s and 40s from a factory that went out of business. I have hundreds of thousands of them, especially shirt buttons. And this was our first prototype design. We're going to go into production with these this summer and hopefully have them for the fall in a heavy Brisbane moss flannel and a Japanese moleskin and a Japanese chambray. So that's a sort of like little introduction to that shirt. Okay, so boner jackets. What is a boner jacket? This is Lightning Magazine. They're friends of mine and my clothing brand in Japan, and they have a magazine devoted to many things, including motorcycle jackets and clothing, and they have an annual leather jacket edition. This edition features a picture of what I consider one of the single most beautiful leather jackets in the world. This is a very early 1930s leather Togs D-pocket jacket. Now I'm going to discuss this design, but there's a real story behind this jacket for me, because this jacket sold on eBay. It must have been 15, 18 years ago at this point. I remember when it came up on eBay, I tried to buy it. And at the time it sold for an obscene amount of money. I think it sold for $3,000 US, which today is a bargain, because I think this jacket is probably a $25,000 jacket. That's how rare and beautiful it is. And Lightning Magazine chose this leather Togs D-pocket jacket as the cover for this issue. Now, a little side note, when you do see these vintage leather jacket issues in Lightning Magazine, I contribute a lot of photos from my collection to these magazines. I think I have maybe 40 jackets from my collection in the last edition. If you're really into leather jackets, this is a magazine to get. You can back order them. It's Lightning Magazine Japan, EI Publishing. There's not a whole lot of English in here, but you don't need it because there's a lot of pictures of jackets. It's a real good reference if you want to get into the rarest of the rare in vintage leather jackets. So I did not succeed in buying this jacket. and now I see it in magazines every year because it's so beautiful, and I regret it. But one of the upsides to being a crazy motherfucker jacket maker is I can try and make a jacket even if I don't own it. And the Ross Mark I was an attempt to capture the spirit of this D-pocket jacket. Now, who was Leather Togs? Leather Togs was a Boston, Massachusetts brand. Not Boston, Massachusetts. They were in Everett, Massachusetts. They're actually in 2 towns of Massachusetts. They put the towns they made their jackets in on their labels. I have a very early Leather Togs D-pocket jacket. That's the pattern I used to make the Avro. It was the 1930s, and it wasn't in Everett. It was in another town. But they were a Massachusetts jacket maker, and for vintage leather jacket enthusiasts like myself, we credit them with coming up with the modern design of the traditional double rider jacket, especially the D-pocket jacket. So you could talk about other brands and how great their jackets are, but really the wellspring of incredible jacket design was this brand Leather Togs. They appeared before the war and they disappeared after the war, and not a lot is known about the brand. There are a few Japanese collectors that have a ton of information and own a bunch of jackets, but in my history of buying and selling vintage jackets, maybe I've bought and sold 4. That's how rare they are, and each one is just an incredible beauty of design and performance and function. So Leather Togs brand basically invented the standard, most attractive, functional version of a D-pocket jacket. Now, that doesn't mean there weren't other D-pocket jackets. There were lots of other D-pocket jackets, and I'll explain why in a second. So, what is a D-pocket jacket? So the first thing you have to understand is what's a D-pocket is a big question. No one knows the origin of this pocket, but I can tell you it's had multiple names, called a D-pocket, a map pocket, a gun pocket. Basically, the pocket itself describes its use. So in early flight jackets, they would have a big D-shaped pocket, and a pilot might put their map in there. Or if you were a motorcycle rider, you might put your pistol in there. Sometimes they call it a pistol pocket. And sometimes they would have a little pocket on top of the pocket, and they would call that an ammunition pocket or a cigarette pocket. So different people would describe this pocket with different terms. Map pocket, D pocket referring to the shape, pistol pocket. But in the end, for a double rider, which is a jacket with an offset zipper like this, where the lapel and the collar flip over into a double shape, and if you notice, when you undo this and you fold the collar over, you get that classic double collar, okay, with an offset zipper and that D pocket. Now watch what happens when I turn that jacket on its side. What does that D pocket look like? It looks like a purse. By the way, when you make a jacket, you put a pocket bag, the cotton bag behind the zipper, into a pocket. It also has a D shape. So you can imagine an early jacket designer trying to make a jacket more practical as the modern age continues and pushes forward and machinery is invented. So early jackets, you might have something for your hands, but mostly they were to keep the elements out. And as you start riding motorcycles or flying airplanes, or you're in the military and you need somewhere to store stuff, pockets become more practical if they're external, so you can get at them. So if you're riding a motorcycle and you need to store your wrench, or you need to carry your gun, when you're driving down those dirt roads before there was paved roads, you didn't know what you're going to run into. That big old purse on the front became very useful, and having it on the left side like that, right-handed guy could reach in, pull out his map, pull out his pistol. Now Leather Togs is the base model for this jacket. Their Leather Togs deep pocket jacket was halfway between an aviator's jacket and a motorcycle double rider's jacket. So when you do up the zipper on this jacket, you get an almost military look with a really basic collar. And then you have these passants here. Some people call them epaulettes, but they're passants. The epaulette is what you snap into the passant. So you have what looks like a really basic, almost military style cut, but super form-fitting like a corset. And in the case of Leather Togs, they had this big old chin strap snapped under the chin, so that if you were riding and it was windy, you just do that up and have your neck in there, and you won't get any wind down and keep you cold. And then that would tuck away just underneath the collar. So with the zipper up, this looks like almost an aviator or a military jacket. And then with this curved front zipper, which curves like an S in two directions, if you wanted to ride and you wanted a little bit of wind to come through your jacket to cool you off, if you were riding in the heat, you just unzip that there and you get a little bit of wind that travels through and it cools you off while you're riding your jacket. So Leather Togs built this basic form. And so my body panels, my collar shape, this beautiful rounded lapel here, that's all from Leather Togs. There's a very, very subtle curve to this. And that giant D pocket, and trust me, I tried to make it as big as I could and still make this a functional jacket. Once you get too big, it starts to tuck up under the fold of the collar and doesn't look just right. But with that subtle angle, it becomes an incredibly practical and useful pocket. You can see that each corner of the pocket has these tube rivets. I've ordered these tube rivets from a metal manufacturer, and these are installed one at a time with a special die set that I had made for the rivet that slowly rolls the rivet over on both sides, and it acts like a reinforcement on the corners so that nothing will rip out. As you can see, we use the tube rivets on top of the belt loops and at the corners of the pocket. Each one of those rivets is installed by hand. Tap, 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 tap. That's how you put one in. That's how long it takes. And then these brass spots here, the spot work, was a traditional add-on that people put on their jackets as far back as the 1930s. And these served a double purpose. One purpose was decorative, and the other purpose was defensive and protective. So from a decorative purpose, you could install these spots, you could create words or symbols or images, and you could make yourself look very intimidating to someone seeing you in a leather jacket walking down the street. Or you could just put one or two in. From another purpose, they were reflective, and in the age of early automobiles, before traffic lights and roads and rules, if you were riding your motorcycle, let's say you had a black leather jacket on and you had shiny silver spots, if a car had headlights, they would see you because the headlights would reflect back off these spots. And then the final purpose was, if you were to fall off and hit the ground, or if you were lucky enough to be riding down a concrete road later in the late 30s or 40s, these little metal pieces hit the road first before the leather and act almost like a kind of armor to protect someone in a jacket from completely destroying their jacket. So spots traditionally had a lot of different purposes, decorative and protective. So this jacket design has a very aggressive cut. It's very form-fitting. You can see it's extremely triangular on the front. It looks like a very simple panel, but in fact there are 38 pieces that go into making this one jacket. You see you have a fairly high upright armhole, and you have a wide aggressive shoulder, and then a narrowing at the waist and a slight widening at the hip. So it has the length of a sports jacket, but it has the fit and the cut of a riding jacket. And then if you see when I turn it around, it has these very aggressive shaped arms. And part of that is when you have a tight-fitting leather jacket, you need that aggressive shape around the elbow. Otherwise the jacket locks you in place and you can't move your arms forward. Now what's interesting about the leather Togs, the original leather Togs had a single back panel. They weren't so fancy like this particular jacket, which I modified and designed. But leather Togs put an extra piece of leather in the armpit here, a sort of armpit gusset. And the idea was when you were wearing it upright, it would just sort of fold in there. And then when you moved your arms forward, it gave you that extra piece of leather to give you an extra 2 inches of distance so that the whole jacket wouldn't ride up. It wasn't a particularly efficient design and later got replaced with bi-swing backs, but it worked for the time, and it was a bit primitive, and it created a really beautiful shape to the jacket. Now I modified my design off the leather Togs jacket to create this very decorative 1930s back. Now I can't tell you who designed this particular style of back with the double pleat and the center gusset first. I can tell you different brands did it. Trojan did it. Peters did it. These pleats don't really serve any purpose on the outer part of the jacket other than to create smaller panels and to create a sort of beautiful Art Deco look. So you have a single pointed yoke, a couple extra pleats in the leather, and then you have this, what some of my customers affectionately call a vagina back, but we like to just call it a back gusset. So it's a single gusset in the back here with the gusset down the middle and the split and some reinforced stitching at top and bottom. Now what that serves to do is when you move your arms forward and you pull on the jacket, if it fits correctly, that gusset is an expansion gusset. You see how it pulls wide? And that's to give you a little bit more mobility in the jacket for when you're riding on a motorcycle or moving your arms forward. Expansion gussets down the center like that are very typical of 1930s jackets. It's quite a beautiful feature, and I like these sort of, I call them sunrise backs or shell backs, because they were very typical of Canadian jacket designs in the 30s. So I feel like I took a leather Togs jacket and a Canadian jacket design and I hybridized them. Now this jacket has a detachable belt. It's much wider, almost like a kidney belt in the back. And as you can see, we have a snap here, and you can use this belt loop both to keep the belt in place or to snap it around your pants belt to hold the back of the jacket from riding up while you were riding. Because when you lean forward, the jacket wants to pull up. And if you tuck your own pant belt in through here, it would keep the jacket attached to the back of your pants, which is especially useful in the early days of motorcycling. If you fell off your motorcycle, you wouldn't want your jacket to ride up and expose skin on your back. The detachable belt here, that's an original old stock 1950s belt buckle. I have several hundred that I purchased from some old factories, and then we manufactured the belt. As you can see, it narrows to the front out of the same leather that we made the jacket from. This style of belt was not on the leather Togs jacket, so This was an adaptive design for me. Original Togs jackets had a sewn-in belt that was attached that just did up around the front. So it's really a spectacular looking jacket. When you look at it, you can really see it. It's almost like a leather corset, and it just make you look like a rock star. Okay? And that's one of my founding principles of design, which is rock stars, cowboys, astronauts, princesses. I want people to feel like a mythical character, a superhero. You put this jacket on, you feel like a superhero. So now I'm just going to talk about the leather for a little bit. This jacket is goatskin. Goat is a very unique leather. It's also 1.2 millimeter goatskin, so it's 2.5, 3 ounce goatskin. Goat is very tough. It creates a kind of complexity when you're making a jacket, but it's also an incredible leather to use for a jacket. Some of the acting principles of goat, you get a lot of creak. So if you like that creaky noise when you're wearing a leather jacket, you get a lot of that creak with goatskin. Secondly, it has a lot of grain, a very fine pebble grain, and that means you get a lot of bend. It's a lot of bending with that fine grain. And thirdly, this is a veg tan goat, so you get a lot of shape when you wear this goat. Okay, so it creases up in the sleeves very quickly because of that shrunken tannage. Now, in the history of jackets, you don't see a lot of goatskin used, but where you do see a lot of goatskin used is in the western United States, where they felt that they could use a lighter weight goatskin, like a 0.9 millimeter goatskin, that it would be tough enough that if you fell off your motorcycle or if you abraded your jacket, it wouldn't disintegrate, but it would be light enough to ride around in the heat. And so you see a lot of West Coast jackets made out of goatskin for that reason. And one of the interesting features of that goatskin was it was quite shiny. So they used to coat, what they would do is they would veg tan the goatskin, and goats are quite small, so a goatskin typically falls between 4 and 7 square feet. You need 35, 40 square feet to make a jacket. So you can't have big panels with goatskin. That's another reason that we have all these decorative backs. If you want to make a goatskin jacket, you have to have small pieces. So they would tan the goatskin. It would be 9, typically 1 millimeter thick. They would spray it with an aniline finish, so veg tan, uncorrected, aniline finish. And then they would finish the aniline with nitrous cellulose, which was a very shiny, hard finish, like a varnish. Now, we don't use nitrous cellulose anymore. You may recognize that term. That was what old film stock was made out of. So if you watched a movie in the 1930s, it would be made on nitrous cellulose. Incredibly good for film, silver nitrate film. Very, 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 very clear, very bright white, very dark blacks. But one of the reasons we don't have a lot of films from the 30s is also very highly explosive. Catches fire and burns easily. So this leather was tanned in India, aniline spray finished, and then coated with a clear finish to look like nitrous cellulose. So we tried to replicate 1930s goatskin, and we achieved an almost perfect result. And when I say that, I own probably 300 goatskin jackets from the 30s, and I can tell you this is as identical to that leather as you're ever going to find. So this is the aniline spray finish goatskin. I will note that you probably can't see it on the camera, but goats have a ridge down the back of the animal, and when you aniline finish them, there's a slightly darker ridge down the middle of the hide, and they're not very big. So when you make jackets with goat leather, you're always going to get these little brown streaky parts, and part of the art of cutting and making this jacket is making all those panels match up with the uneven colors, and it's part of the beauty of this jacket is those uneven colors. Now I'm just going to unzip it and show you what the inside looks like. Again, I'm very proud of this Ross jacket. This is the wind flap. That's the internal pocket on the left side. Again, you can store things in it. It's such a tight fitting jacket, you don't want to put a lot in the pocket. You'll notice that we have a leather armhole gusset for wear that keeps the jacket from wearing out in the liner in the armpit, and that the internal liner is pleated as well, which you have to do for the expansion. And it's got our own custom goatskin label. We've got a kidney belt that's leather as well for wear on the inside. I'm really proud of this jacket. If you want to follow us, if you like these videos, follow us on Instagram or YouTube, Himel Brothers Leather, probably Himel Bros.